2 shows that are happening right now. Plug.
Yeah. Cool.
I'll explain them in a moment.
Awesome. Okay. So actually, we first met also at the Astro Blackness 2 conference at LMU. You know,
Yeah, of course I remember.
You're giving me that look. Zeal Harris is known for contemporary, seductive, colorful, characteristic, political, urban, vernacular story paintings. She is a Los Angeles-based visual artist. She's been in recent exhibitions in Port-au-Prince at Hades Ghetto Biennale, in New York at the Caribbean Cultural Center of the African Diaspora, in Arizona at the Mesa Contemporary Arts Museum, and in LA at the California African American Museum, the Makeshift Museum, 18th Street Arts Center, and Gallery 25. And Zeal has been mentioned in our reviews, interviewed in multiple publications, including Rising Up a Sonali, Pacifica Radio, Fabric Magazine, The Culture Trip, Life in LA, Recorded Journal, The Black Girl Show, Clock Tower Radio Shack at the LA Weekly, and the Los Angeles Times. Zeal has an MFA in studio art from Otis College of Art and Design.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome.
Thank you. So yes, I want to say that I have 2 shows happening right now. One of them is a 3-woman show that I organized. I invited the other artists to participate. The show is called Sweet Sticky Things. It's in the Melrose area of Los Angeles. If you're interested after the talk today, or I can give you a flyer or additional information. Also, press came out today, so there's an article that was written by an art critic today on the show in the Huffington Post. So that was written by Matt Gleason, and it was very interesting and very favorable. The second show that I'm a part of has more than 40 artists, and it's called Iconic Black Panther Los Angeles. This is the second exhibit. It started in Oakland, and now another show is happening here in Chinatown, actually, in Chinatown's Gallery Row at Gregorio Escalante Gallery. Both exhibits are going until the beginning of May, and each artist in Iconic Black Panther has one artwork. So, and their event both. So tomorrow there's an artist talk for Sweet Sticky Things, and it's at Launch Gallery on La Brea, like around 2nd in the Melrose area. And our talk is being moderated by Naima Keith, who she's the deputy director of the California African American Museum, and she's a former curator of the Studio Museum of Harlem. Incidentally, she wrote an essay in this book, The Shadows That Took Shape, which was the first speculative Afrofuturist exhibit that happened at the Studio Museum of Harlem. And this is one of the key texts that I used to prepare my talk today. And I'll explain why in a moment. So if you are interested in fine art specifically, or art, this is a really, really, really great key text to look at images of artwork by artists that are being, I guess, put into the category of speculative or Afrofuturist, as well as defining themselves as that. Sometimes they're different. Sometimes that happens differently for different people. So I just want to start off by saying that I was a little surprised to be invited here, because Afrofuturism is an ideology, a concept that I'm very much interested in. I always liked science fiction when I was a kid. And, you know, I definitely consider myself a Trekkie. I'm not so hardcore that I dress up in costumes, but I have watched every episode multiple times for the first 3 series, which would be the original, through Deep Space Nine. After Gene Roddenberry passed, I found it a little bit more difficult to watch. Just the quality to me just kind of, there are Trekkies who would argue with me, but I felt the quality went down a little bit in terms of the acting and the production, and so I'll just leave it at that. I feel like there was this point in time in my life when I was about 14 where Star Trek came into conflict with my Southern Black Christian Baptist upbringing. And, you know, in a way, I feel like both Star Trek as a text was equally formative to who I am today as the Bible. And so anyway, I am actually on the verge of moving into a place where I'm going to work on a particular series that will have Afrofuturist themes. I would say that up to this point, my concern has largely been creating narratives through Black womanhood and of Black womanhood, of life now. So with that being said, I'm just going to start with pictures. I just want to also kind of give this disclaimer that I'm not a professor, I'm an artist. And I noticed that a lot of people that spoke today have like these super fancy PowerPoints with lots of wordage. And usually artists just throw up pictures and talk about the pictures. So that's kind of what I'm going to do. So I'm from Virginia, and so is this drum. I'm from the Hampton Roads area, which is the same place where the English settlers first arrived and where Pocahontas was from, living with 50,000 Native people already before the white settlers came. In 1619, the first Dutch ship brought the first slaves, or I can't actually remember if they were enslaved or indentured servants, from Africa. And this drum was probably brought about this time. So yesterday I said, well, how will I start my presentation? You know, let me start off with an African drum. And I remembered this image and I went to go look. And I have always known this to be the first thing that was, that anyone has said was created by a person of African descent in the United States of America. But yesterday I read something that said this drum may have come from Akan on the ship with the slaves. Well, Ghana, let me be more specific, from Africa. So talking about speculative, it's a perfect way to kind of ground how I'm going to talk about my work today, which we've already heard people define Afrofuturism and the speculative as, you know, something that is, what did you say, chronopolitical, that is like borrowing from the past, going to the past, looking at different time zones or temporalities as layered as opposed to being linear. So that's the drum. I think there's like an iconic way of thinking about what Afrofuturism is or what the speculative is. And so I think that if I go to the average Black person, like just anyone on the street, probably if I say the word Afrofuturism, they might think about something like this, like 9 times out of 10. It's like, especially if you said, well, what is Afrofuturist art? It's going to involve outer space, spaceships, maybe kitschy costumes. This is LaBelle. This is Patti LaBelle before she just, you know, just before she went solo. These may be the first Black aliens I ever saw on TV. And actually, I thought they were in the original series. And no, it was this one? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I thought I remembered some Black people with black and white dots on their face in the original series.
Let that be your last battlefield.
Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna go look that one up.
Trekkies are here.
This is Saya Woolfolk, and she's actually she's often put in the category of Afrofuturist, but I think her work resides in a lot of different places. It can be seen as surrealism, it could be seen as magic realism, it could be seen as so many different things. And she, if anyone's interested in this, she's born in Japan. I'm not really sure what her ethnicity is, ironically, and she, like I said, she has been included in Afrofuturist themed art exhibits. And she has a new race of people that she created called the empathics, and they're kind of like part plant and like a sort of like, you know, merger of the human with plant and kind of like global. And I think that's probably a metaphor for her own upbringing in some way, I'm just guessing. So she creates really interesting worlds and really alluring work that is highly conceptual. So this is an installation. You can see sculptural forms. She also does videos. And she's even had a Fulbright in Brazil where she studied indigenous performance in Brazil. So really interesting. I can't exactly remember why I put this in here. I have to look at my notes. Oh, okay, I remember it. Okay, so again, Afrofuturism, speculative, you know, we think about the future and we might think of something like this. This was actually created by a Spanish woman from Spain, and she encountered information about the space program that was created by Edward Mukuka Nkolosa. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but he, as you can see in this article from the 60s, he said, we're going to Mars, and he meant Zambia, with a space girl captain, a missionary. And my favorite quote from this is that the missionary would not force Christianity on the people of Mars if they did not want it. So it, again, it's interesting because when we talk about Afrofuturism or Black speculative, that it's not just Black people creating it, and that's pretty interesting. That could be a paper for someone. This is Carrie James Marshall, who has a retrospective exhibit at MoCA in Los Angeles right now. I've seen the exhibit. I highly recommend it. It's some of the best painting I've ever seen in my life. Probably one of the best 5 art shows, and I see like 100 art shows a year easily. So, okay, I'm exaggerating. Maybe 30 a year. But definitely his painting is amazing. And again, he's in this category of being a painter, but not an Afrofuturist. So, I just want everyone to be clear that because someone does something that could be put into a speculative or Afrofuturist category, they may work in other ways, in other mediums, other genres, other subjects. So I just really wanted to bring this one up because, again, it has this sort of iconographic look of Afrofuturism. And, we have 2 Black characters with natural hair in outer space. And they're actually djembes that look like technological objects, but they're djembes. They're African drums, and they're communicating and transmitting signals. And this looks like a painting, but it was actually a light box. So, and it was very large. Each panel was probably a minimum of 30 inches wide. And this is David Huffman, and he's from Oakland. He's in the San Francisco, Oakland area. He's a Black artist, and I first saw his work, and he creates large-scale narratives. And with the obvious signs of futurism, you can see like astronaut-looking characters there and pyramid figures, kind of referring to the past. This is actually kind of abstract and conceptual at the same time, even though the figures are rendered realistically somewhat. I want to say that because I'm a narrative painter, my mission and purpose is telling stories in my artwork. And that is trying to communicate past, present, and future. I'm interested in the vernacular. So what that means for me is that I'm looking at a lot of folk art, Black folk art from around the world to draw from that and create artwork that communicates sophisticated ideas and stories that touch upon multiple discourses at once, but still the look of the work is very simple. I'm getting to my work in a moment. Harriet Powers. This is the oldest surviving quilt made by a woman of African descent in the United States of America. And she actually depicts a meteor shower here. Oh, I'm sorry, here. That happened in, I think, the 1830s. And when I get to some of my work in a moment, I'll talk about how part of what I do is signify, on other Black artists' work. So it could be the title, it could be the style, it could be the actual way the artwork looks. So this is Jacob Lawrence, and if there was like a family tree of artists, like a lineage, I'd probably be on the same branch with him. Yes, I'm putting myself there. He's one of the classical sort of like artists. He's the first Black artist to become famous who was trained by Black artists. And he's often put with the Harlem Renaissance, but he actually was not technically in the Harlem Renaissance since he was a child being taught by the Harlem Renaissance artists. He's most known for his Great Migration series and basically depicting everyday life of African Americans moving from the South to the cities in the North. This one is Harriet Tubman reaching for the North Star. This is my work, and so that's what I meant about signifying, just to go back a little bit. So that's Harriet Powers. And this is my work that's on exhibit right now. I just finished this work like a week ago. It's on fabric. And so I really wanted to reference this history of the feminine, the Black feminine also. And this one is called Liturgical Language of a Free Traveler. The reason it has that title is because Corinne Gaines had, if you don't know who Corinne Gaines is, she was a young woman who was about 23 years old in Baltimore, who was recently killed by the police. She was in a standoff with police, armed police, in her home with her child, and she was told to come out, and she did not come out, and she was killed. Her son was hurt, but not killed. So it all started a few months before that when she was driving with a cardboard license plate that she put on her car that said Free Traveler. And so she didn't have all her papers straight. So she was kind of riding dirty in that sense, And she got into an argument with the police, and then she went to try to go get her paperwork, and things escalated in a very bad way. Many of you can look up the story and draw your own opinions. I'm not a professor in that way. I'm an artist. I was concerned about police violence incidents that were happening between 2015 and 2017. And I wanted to juxtapose the sort of like happy Black children and young people coming of age in this era of police violence, where it seemed like every day I was turning on the TV and here was the story. So that's why I have the fire and the water going back and forth. It's not so easy to see in here, but this is Corinne Gaines here, and this is the police officer that shot her. There are other images in there that reference the times. I kind of have to rush through this and keep it short, so I may come back to this image in a moment. This is Faith Ringgold. I would say like if like Jacob Lawrence and Faith Ringgold had a kid, it might be me. I mean, even look at the color schemes. I didn't even notice that until I put the two together. So she was part of the Black arts movement in the 1960s. She's the main Black woman artist who was part of the Black arts movement of the 60s, Africoba specifically. And actually, never mind, too much right now. I'll talk about that later. Anyways, she's known for using text and images that are narrative scenes, using a vernacular folk art style to do her storytelling and quilting to make her work. This is another image that's in the current show that I'm in. So this one is actually created in a vernacular, in terms of the way that academic fine artists think about art. This is actually created in a vernacular style too. I don't usually do portraiture, and I find that most images that we see are made for quick consumption. That would be illustration and graphic arts, because products, those type of modes are used to sell products, and people want you to get the point quickly to buy the thing or communicate the idea. And I also read something when I first came to Howard that said, something about how I is the most common word in the English language, and that there are languages where I is not the most common word. And I went to a Black university, Howard University undergrad. So the contrast was a particular place in Africa. And I thought, oh, wow, that's a really different way of thinking about being in the world as an individual. We also learned that portraiture really places an individual above society. So another reason why I choose to work the way that I do, to create narratives and diminish the human figure to a small size in our work, is because I'm interested in speaking to community and interrelationships as opposed to glorifying the individual subject. But I am celebrating Black women's sexuality here. And this is actually a vernacular photograph in the sense that it was created from a social media photograph. I never thought about my work as being media driven, but one of the artists in the show said, oh yeah, it looks like, I guess if you don't watch the news, then it would seem like, oh, you're watching TV when you look at my work, or going through social media. This is the first painted image that survives by a Black woman in America. Her name was Sarah Mapps Douglas. She was an abolitionist, and even if she didn't use the word feminist to describe herself, she was one. This is actually a poem. She was a was a poet, a teacher, an artist, and an abolitionist. And her particular concern was Black women who were enslaved. She was free. This is a painting by a folk artist named Sister Gertrude Morgan. And so she's sort of like painting herself here. So it's a self-portrait, and she's known for a really idiosyncratic, unique style of painting, as well as including text. It was often religious. Adrienne Marie Brown is an activist from Detroit that I also met with Tobias at the Afrofuturism symposiums of the past couple years. And she was actually the first person that I heard say that social justice, or the act of believing in it, the faith and hope in it, is a speculative act. And therefore she uses Afrofuturism as part of her activism. And I just thought it was really profound. And also from her page today, I went to her Facebook page today because I couldn't remember her entire name, but it says, she put a quote by James Baldwin, which says, "You write in order to change the world. If you alter, even by 1 millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change it." And that's kind of the position I come from with my artwork. So that's Sister Gertrude Morgan. And this is a painting where I was like playing around with, making my work appear very hardcore to look like it was a folk art painting. And the bike flying through in the air is kind of like, E.T., go home, I don't know, fly home, I don't know. And this is a multi-denominational neighborhood, somewhat based on the 12th and N neighborhood that I used to live in DC or other neighborhoods. The Mormons are, this did happen there. I don't know if it still does, but I have seen Mormons still going to people of color neighborhoods as missionaries, Christian missionaries. So I really just wanted to like express my anger about it. So I have the kids stealing the bikes. So, I just wanted to again reference this sort of like this act of signifying. Signifiers of race in my artwork also means signifying on other Black artists. I try to very much do this with Black women because we have so little representation in fine art. So here I have artworks with text and Black characters. For me, I don't know if this is a weird thing of saying, but as soon as I see skin on a character or a person depicted in artwork that is not white, in a way it becomes more political and more personal for me. Just to show you the difference between how the work appears on the wall in this way, it's a little more difficult to look at this way, but there's a process that I go through that is actually technological, it's digital. So this is the flat artwork before it gets transferred to fabric. It's a little easier to view it in this type of environment and in books. So when we talk about cultural diffusion and appropriation, it really comes into play. That's a conversation that can, come into play with my work a lot. This one is based on a piece of Japanese gift wrap that I bought in a gay neighborhood in DC. And I just love it. I had this thing for like 20 years on my wall. And I was like, how can I make something that has to, like a painting scene that's like Black women in this wallpaper? So at the time I was taking a lot of dance classes that have to do with the African diaspora. So, it comes out like this in this painting. So, so there is some appropriation there. And hopefully it's not bad, because I feel like part of the badness about appropriation comes from claiming that you invented the thing or not giving credit to where it came from. So this one's really just about sisterhood in the African diaspora. And this one is also about sisterhood in the African diaspora. It's literally about the exchange of ideas and culture between Black women, most specifically African-American women and Haitian women. I started this sketch while I was in Haiti at the Ghetto Biennale. And it's inspired by a personal anecdote from Zora Neale Hurston's travels to Haiti and her experience with voodoo, observing voodoo. And while I was there, I also learned that the way to the other gods within voodoo, you have to go through, I forgot his name, Damballa first, which is the representation of the snake. So you have to go to Damballa to ask for help to get to the other gods and goddesses. And the way that you get the attention of Damballa is through beauty. And so that's, for me, that became the key, my key way of understanding why Haitian art was so beautiful, especially a sequin drapeau. So if anyone's interested in that, they can go look those up. This one is based on, it's based on Wild Seed by Octavia Butler. I may rework this artwork a little bit. That happens when you're an artist. I heard John Outerbridge say, and he's like considered a living legacy now and a living treasure in Los Angeles, that if it comes back to the studio, it's fair game. I've been reworking this one for a little while, but it's based on her novel Wild Seed, and it's about kind of like a warlock type character who goes and brings a woman from, he basically takes a girlfriend from West Africa to America I think the late 1700s, and she actually observes the slave trade as a witness as opposed to being a slave. So she's walking alongside them as they're chained, basically. He lures her with this idea that he's going to give her children that will never outlive her. So she's lived for like 8 generations, and all of her children have died, and she does not like this feeling. So he also has a project that's kind of like a breeding project in North America, where he's collecting people who have these extreme gifts and talents from around the world and trying to create this perfect child, or this perfect being. So his son is his right-hand man, which is the first character on the boat. And then, so we have children, we have babies, we have references to ancient Egypt in terms of the way that the style that I, and the symbols that I used. The dolphins, the woman that is the girlfriend is actually a changeling, so she can change her shape, and she changes into a dolphin while she's going across the Atlantic Ocean, which is really powerful imagery. And then a slave ship, and inside, instead of the people, I have sacred language. I actually did research this, but I forgot which one I used, and I actually made up my own language based on those symbols. I think it's one of the sacred languages that come from Nigeria. And this is Krista Franklin, who I called 2 days ago to get a little help for this presentation. Because I said, Krista, all of my work is not Afrofuturists, but I was invited to this conference thing. What do I do? And she actually is like me. Not all of her work is Afrofuturist, but she's, with the Afrofuturists sometimes. So this particular one is based on the novel Kindred. And so she made a series of artwork that basically she wanted to work out and with the things that she was reading in Octavia's books and create images that existed, because there were no films at the time that she could go to. She felt herself hungering for movies. So I think there's also a lot of collage in contemporary art, particularly in Afrofuturist art. I have a lot of theories about that. They're just personal theories. I mean, I think in terms of practicality, it takes a lot of time to make artwork. And most artists have to work another job, in addition to make their work. So, it is interesting to note that within Afrofuturism, there is a lot of collage or photography or realism that's being used. So, if you don't know the story, basically, a Black woman goes through a wall back into time to take care of an ancestor who's white. And he's on a plantation, and the son of a man who has slaves on his property, and some of which know her people. And then she decides that she's going to stay around and keep going back to help this young man, because she knows he is going to be the father of. He's going to be one of her ancestors. At the time, he's not yet. The child has been birthed that she knows is part of her line of people. So I have like 3 paintings. There's 4. There's actually 4. I haven't finished the 4th one, but 3 paintings where I illustrate moments that really moved me from a play written by a woman from India. I didn't know this at the time, but I was working at a theater, and I was reading the plays that come in, deciding if they were going to be produced at the theater. So it was a dramaturgy fellowship, or literary management is what it was called. And the most amazing play that I read in that year was written by an Indian woman named Manjula Padmanabhan. And it was a speculative text. And it was a play about a man about a family. And in this family, the man, I guess the patriarch of the family, couldn't find a job anywhere in Bombay except at a spare parts factory, which is like a place where you basically sign off your body, and your body parts would be for sale to the highest bidder, basically. And so I kind of came up with my own illustrations. So when we talk about the speculative, there's a lot that happens as an artist, because you have to speculate. Well, what kind of place would they live in? What would it look like? I've never been to India. I've only been into a couple of Indian friends' homes, and they certainly didn't look Indian inside, stereotypically Indian. So whatever that means. And so in this one, I have colors and the patterns and the rugs on the floor and a family, and like, how would this look, if in a modern time, a man who has to give his body over to work in this way. And there is a market for organs that is currently happening. I was surprised to talk to my sister about what I was doing, and she confessed that she had actually been online 2 weeks before that looking to see how much it would cost to buy a kidney, because her fiance's father was having kidney failure. So in the play, there's a grandmother who buys a sort of like pod for herself, and she never comes out of it like halfway through the play, and it takes care of all her bodily needs as well as entertains her. So I was like, well, what would that look like? And so actually the title of this one is Harvest, that's the name of the play, Google Pod. And then I was like, well, I'm a Black woman, and I don't want to just be making this image of people and letting people think. I wanted people to speculate on why Oprah is in there. So I put Oprah in Sorry. And then I went online and found that she had actually gone to India. So there were actual images of her at the Taj Mahal and like walking around. And I was like, okay. So I wanted to deal with this idea that Black people in America are responsible for the images that we put out, that we influence the world also. Someone used the word empire. Was that you earlier? That we're part of the empire as well? And what does that mean? How much responsibility do we have in this? Can we inspire, and do we also colonize in some way? So that one that's what that's about. Oh, and the soldiers, time. Okay. The soldiers actually are based on the Hunger Games soldiers.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go quickly through the last images. So that's a cyborg. And Cisco, who's a prophet in Deep Space Nine. He's a captain and the main character show, and a prophet. I should be specific. So this was created by John Jennings, and that's again a cyborg, and again a kind of iconographic looking Afrofuturist speculative kind of image.
Janelle.
Yeah, of Janelle Monáe. I forgot to mention that. This is Harvest also. This goes with that, and this is just playing with the idea of Indian hair. So not only did I want to deal with the organs, but I wanted to deal with hair and hair weaves. So this woman who's Black American, could be Latina, is sharing hair with the Indian woman. And this temple in the background is the temple that sells the most Indian hair in the world. Because people pilgrimage there, and they shave their heads, and then the hair gets sold in the international market. And so on the side, you'll see a beauty supply store like in the hood. And it's for Black and Latina women. So it says, bienvenidos. So again, the speculative, I'm just gonna move through these really quickly. So I illustrated a friend's trip to Beirut. And again, people's memories and how they move through space and time and places is different. So she didn't remember a lot of things that I needed the information to make the paintings accurately without photographs. So I had to kind of like go and do my own research and put it together, which again could mean that I actually have created some images that are stereotypical in some ways, or just fantasy and just inaccurate. Like looking at white people, like white Europeans drawing, Native people in the 1600s, and you look at those pictures, like, I don't think they really look like that. Again, I'm responsible, but I hope I'm coming from a good place so that I'm accountable, but I'm hoping that it's not done in a way that's bad. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah. All right, if you have
sort of be that guy.
I have a website. You can go to my website and take a look there. I wanted to just leave off with the conversation that happened with the painting of Emmett Till at the Whitney Museum. If anyone wants to ask questions about that later, afterwards, you're welcome to do that. So that's it.
Oh man,
Right.
Why don't I put this pot?
Just do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have seen my face so many times today.
All right,
So,
let's start.
I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, no.
Sorry.
I'm gonna try and keep it short. But how do I do that? Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi everyone. As some of you know, my name is Pavithra Prasad, and I'm here today on this panel with Zeal. We're actually, as you were speaking, I just felt like there was so many points of connection between our work and what I wanted to do here today. So I'm here today to speak to you as an artist and as a performance artist. And because it's so hard sometimes to actually speak about performance in a linear, methodical, analytical way, because the process is not linear, methodical, or analytical always. I mean, the kind of critique that I'm doing and a lot of performance folks who are doing this kind of work get to do it's coming from a non-linear, non-analytical, and really embodied critical space. So I thought instead of giving a paper about my work or talking about my work, I need sound also. I might actually do, oh, there we go. Do kind of a performance lecture for you that goes through a little bit of my process as well as my style of performance, which relies a lot on research-based collage and pastiche work, but in performance format. So I will show you what that looks like in a second. So I did a show several years ago now called The Occidental Moon, and it was a 1-hour solo show. And I wanted to talk about just that one show here today. But it kind of represents a larger version of what I do in smaller bits and pieces. So assemblage approach to art making that doesn't live in a gallery, that doesn't live online. It just happens in moments. So this is the only one that kind of survived in a documented form. So I'm going to talk about it here. And it was later picked up by other theater companies and performed in Chicago and Denver. So I'm going to talk about the very first production that I did. So this presentation is called Notes on Terrestrial Performance of Outer Space. How to build a moon from scraps. Begin with the song. Stumble upon one in a bin of cassette tapes, gathering mold in your grandparents' cabinet of ephemera, preferably in a language not native to the singer. Be sure to note how the language, say English, warbles into the space you are in. A little alien, but mostly recognizable. It is a cherished voice. P.B. Srinivas, the Tamil singer whose dulcet tones carried more than 200 songs in South Indian languages between 1950 and 1980.
Man has set his foot on the moon. Moon is now but Dehradun. Moon is now but Dehradun. Armstrong is in me, Armstrong. His mind strong and aim strong. Aldrin is there another man who to walk on moon and land. Man has set his foot on moon. Moon is no but Dehradun. Moon is now but Dehradun.
Become utterly mesmerized by the man's vision and set out to track him down. Many winding paths through Chennai will lead you to his door, and he knew that in 1969, as he sat fixed to the family's black and white television set, he had already begun composing the song he would send to President Nixon and the astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Listen to the song repeatedly until you are sure the words are, "Man is now a flying bird, heaven's voice he has heard. So much space is found in space, every problem man can face." Realize the audacity of this hope. So much space is found in space. Space enough for other worlds, other configurations of belonging and history. Remember the wheel of time spinning amongst the stars. The narrator of an entire nation's Sunday morning epic mythological drama, the Mahabharata. Allow the baritone voice of time to reverberate in the fog of your memory and out through your ear. As I am immortal and neutral, I see pasts, presents, and futures all at once. Pay attention. Conspiracies in the year 2008. When you're stumbling upon a good Indian English song about the moon coincides with the Indian government's plans to launch a lunar probe, the Chandrayaan-1. Pay attention to the colonial impulse of a post-colonial nation when it decides to paint the probe in colors of the Indian flag. Pay attention when scientists, in all seriousness, declare that the planned disintegration of the unmanned probe upon impact will be just as if India had planted its triumphant flag on the lunar surface. Discover the Chandrayaan-1's Twitter feed. Read with growing glee how it talks back to its followers. I fly by past the lunar South Pole. Hope you enjoy. Today was the 40th anniversary of Apollo 8. Proud to be in a similar orbit as many of my predecessors. So cute. At L Cross NASA, should you be tweeting while driving? Pay attention to the orbit. Hoping children around the world had a great Children's Day. One day, we hope to see you here. They're going to celebrate my success of my mission with a special lunch. Feel a little sad when Chandrayaan-1 loses contact with humans a few months later. Feel a bit sadder 8 years later when the happy deserter is found by a NASA radar hitchhiking its way around the Earth, only a wee bit bedraggled for the wear. As I am immortal and neutral, I see pasts, presents, and futures all at once. Fall into an internet rabbit hole and chance upon a dubious early 20th century Sanskrit publication by one Pandit Subbaraya Shastri called the Vaimanika Shastra. Struggle to translate it yourself using your 12 years of Sanskrit classes from school. Fail. Read a translation of it and find that the man claimed to have psychically received ancient aeronautical secrets from the mythical sage Bharadwaj. Read about Vimanas, ancient flying machines described in the Vaimanika Shastra. Read about airborne missiles and weapons built from unknown materials. Read about time travel made possible by burning and ingesting certain untranslatable herbs and chemicals. Observe Hindu nationalist discussions on subreddit fora in which abound florid attestations to the lost martial technology of mythical Indian civilizations, which must be brought back by studying ancient Sanskrit texts of heroic conquest so that we can reinstate the superiority of the Hindu nation and make India great again. Recall the stories you were told as a child. Stories in which the moon is a haughty, cheeky bastard who is cursed time and again by the gods. Wonder why the maligned moon is subject to such repeated abjection. Wonder if the recuperative imagination of a once subjugated nation has turned its head towards a bellicose mythological past to support an imperialist future. Begin writing a script. Write about Chandrayaan-1, about gods and goddesses, about planets that love each other and are jealous of each other. Write dystopic fiction about an Indian colony on the moon where Muslims, Dalits, queer people, and the Chinese struggle to find dignity in a post-nationalist Hindu supremacy. Write about Kalpana Chawla, the Indian-American astronaut who died aboard the ill-fated Columbia shuttle. Write about black money in the Indian economy laundered through purchasing property on the moon. Write about the search for water in space, life-giving, preserving, transmuting, conducting, bioforming, transcendental water. Write about P.B. Srinivas and his dream of borderless humanity, where man can go through moon to God. Build a set. Equip it with planets and stars. Hang 55 circular mirrors to recreate the dances of space damsels from 1950s Indian science fiction films. Perform the old man who sings without irony couplets about conquest and colonization. After landing on the Mars, clay will become golden bars. From the Mars to Mercury, man will fly sans injury. Jupiter will be the next, man will read him as a text. Venus will join in the list to give a romantic twist. Then will Saturn have his turn and will make the man return. All his powers man will use, but undoubted he'll refuse to use them for destruction, his goal being construction. Renounce a homeland, forego citizenship, live in transition, build and unbuild, make art and take it apart.
There will be no need for fraud. Man will go to good to God. Man will go to good to God. Man will go alive to God.
Give your work to others. Let it go and see it become something else in the mouths and bodies of others. Give every permission. Applaud every performer who moves through your work for an hour Acknowledge their choices. In the year 2014, consider another performance, this one from Mangalyaan 1, the Mars orbiter launched by India in 2014. It tweets, "What do you think about privatization in space sector, especially in India? Return to your grandparents' cabinet of ephemera that has outlived them by a decade. Throw out almost everything, but stop at one photo album. Note the dates just inside the cover, 1990 to 1994. Rewind your mind to a time of cultural transformation and shifts, neoliberalization, privatization, free trade, foreign investment, MTV instead of All India Radio, satellite TV instead of Doordarshan, Star Trek instead of Mahabharata. Stop at a photograph from 1991. You see yourself, a round body, slightly knock-kneed, whitened up with pancake makeup, pulled across a swimming pool, balanced in a boat, tethered to slightly older girls. Allow the memory to return. Allow yourself to cringe at the display. A flash of a moment in which India attempts to practice its new look. The glimmer of sequins on young girls' bare skin. Sidereal reflections across the surface of a swimming pool. It is otherworldly in every way. Aquatic, galactic, post-human, futuristic. The cosmic conspiracy begs another trip to outer space, this time in a floating Vimana headed straight to a water-bearing red planet. In the year 2014, as India looks forward, allow yourself to look back. Thank you. If you have questions for Zeal, and
Oh my.
I'll leave that up. Just
It's fun. So that's actually you?
It all makes sense now.
right? Yes.
So this was taken in India?
In
Where-
1991.
Where was this? Where?
So this is in Chennai, where I grew up. It's the south of India. It was called Madras
Okay.
at the time. It's now called Chennai. And it was right around the time that the economy of India opened up to privatizing the public sector. So foreign investment, satellite TV, free trade, and giant loans from the IMF and World Bank were taken. So one of the cultural consequences of that were, in my city at least, was a rush of building swimming pools, because somehow the idea that bare female bodies were not given any other space in which to exist. So something liminal about being in water for the elite middle class. So I was part of this water ballet troupe that would go around inaugurating swimming pools across the city.
Seriously.
Yeah, please.
I had a question for Zeal that was similar. You're from Virginia, the Tidewater area?
Yeah.
When I was looking at you, I think you were like more like Afro surrealist.
I'm sorry, so you were looking
Kind
at.
of like you're closer to Krista Franklin in a similar ways.
Oh, okay.
You all cross borders. But I was just thinking a project that would be right down here when it's like 1619, because everybody in the next couple of years as teen approaches, we're going to be talking about the 400-year thing of us being here to now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of the artists and Afrofuturists are going to be writing about
Interesting.
it. And I was thinking that'd be a great curated thing for you to pull together.
Actually, my next project is taking in some of those themes,
Yeah.
and so it'll be timely. You're telling me something that I can help market my work once it's
Oh,
finished.
yeah.
So.
From that area. So, but you said you were a Baptist background, so I could sense that in when you talk about related, your upbringing as a Baptist, maybe you said in one part of your presentation, struggling with some.
Oh, well, I don't know that I was really struggling. I mean, some people struggle with religion. I don't think that I was struggling. I just didn't want to go to church.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out how to like not go to church.
Yeah.
And that like, I think, okay, so my mom was not religious, but she felt that it was a good thing to go experience a lot of different religions.
Yeah.
I also think she just wanted me and my sister out of the house on Sundays. So she could have time to herself because she knew that we went with our grandmother.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I mean, but when I started questioning, for me, this is just me personally, it was really difficult for me to match up values and ideas that, a show like Star Trek introduced me to with some of the sermons that I was hearing in church, which were dogmatic and xenophobic and, just there were a lot of things I just personally had issues with, like the belief in heaven and hell. There were a lot of things actually. So, yeah.
Isn't it amazing how the idea that watching one TV show that was so visionary in its outlook across 7 oceans and continents. I grew up watching Star Trek in India and felt the same way, that it presented an alternate reality where I had a space in this world. My favorite was Deanna Troi.
Oh, yeah.
She was an empath. She was part, the painting of the voodoo ceremony that you were talking about. It's like that kind of connectivity through sensed feeling.
Well, I actually, just to bring it up, now that you say that and you say that, the thing that I think bothered me the most was, the way that Christianity was taught in the church that I was growing up, in the churches that I was going to, because my grandmother founded the church with other women, and we went around to other churches within the region, like on trips, like day trips. I forget the word, but the belief that Christianity was better than any other religion. And so that really, for me, was the fundamental reason why, and probably to this day, that I take issue with any religion that promotes itself as the best or the only, or, yeah. So.
I actually just want to take a quick opportunity to ask the audience, who else here watches or has watched Star Trek and found it change their life to a degree? No, I'm curious. We've got a good room of people here. I'm just curious to see how old people are, what generation. This is interesting. Anyone here an undergraduate feel that Star Trek has been a part of their life?
Yeah.
A little bit?
I used to watch it because it used to air in the mornings sometimes.
Okay. No, this is a curious question because it's a generational thing.
The real question is which version?
I'm leaving that open. All right.
So we actually managed to make up a little time. So if you'd like to chat with us on our way to our second venue, and that's downstairs, the Armor Theater, it's room 100. You'll pass through these 2 glass doors, and it'll be to your left on the other end of the building. Please get some coffee on the way. I think there's coffee outside still. So we'll see you downstairs. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
I'll tell you that. Well, it's interesting. You're right. Some of the things did kind of like they were like crossed over a little bit. But yeah, I definitely appreciated the performance aspect that you brought back. Art can't be represented visually. It has to be. I mean, it changes form once you record it or document.
That was incredible, Pat.
Thank you.
I actually really want to see you perform. And thank you, Zeal, for going through